What's good YouTube? Welcome to my channel, Lars in Conditioning. Here's the reason why the approach that Mike Mentzer have and have spoken about why it actually works. And the reason behind it is very simple. If you know with yourself you have one set and that's all you have, if you got to one set of bench press or whatever it might be, if you know you got one set, just one, and that's all you're going to get, and then you go home essentially, you have no choice but to be extremely intense about what you're doing. And this is actually why it works, because it's basically the same thing I have tried to teach other people in the past that tried doing like way too much volume. I have told them, do two sets really hard on your movements, pick a handful of movements, do those two sets. If you, in a couple of months, still feel like you're recovering well, add a set here or there, follow for a few more months. If you still feel like you recover well, add more sets to something else that you didn't increase the sets on before. Because I do not promote increasing volume across the board. Bad idea. If you follow this approach, that you do two really hard sets on an exercise and you do 5 sets or 5 exercises total, then you will have a grand total of 10 sets in your training. And if you, after 2 months, feel you're recovering pretty well, and you decide to be like, okay, I'm gonna do 1 set more per movement, you're going to increase your training volume in terms of set-wise by 50%. That's going to be probably too much. What I would recommend that you do 1 or 2 movements where you add 1 set, just in like 1 or 2 movements, and then follow that same approach for a couple of months. And if you constantly, after 2 months, still feeling you're recovering pretty well, then the movements that are still on the 2 sets, some of them add 1 set to them, boom, bump it up. And then within 6 months time, you'll be looking at being at around 15 sets for that particular same workout. And if you're still feeling like you're recovering well, and then this is the thing, if you're still feeling you're recovering well, like good, not good enough, but well, if you actually feel like you're recovering pretty damn well, then you can actually follow the same approach. Again, adding a little more work. And the sooner or later, and for some people, that wall is going to come sooner, for some it's going to come drastically later. You're going to hit a wall that says, this is the end point, no further. We cannot take any more. And this approach, this is the reason why this approach works. Because if you know you have just 1 set or 2 sets to get all the stimulus that you're after, you know you have to, basically you have to put all the energy into those 1 or 2 sets, and then you go home, or you move on to the next exercise for a different muscle group and do the same thing. Then that's why it works, and that's why it will always work. And another reason also is for people who have extremely low fatigue resistance, which basically means that their body will fatigue extremely quickly. So those are the same kind of people that would not be able to do strongman, because everything you do in strongman will fatigue you tremendously. So those kind of people, even if you were to control for volume, you would not be able to handle being a strongman, because the fatigue resistance is extremely low, which is okay, which is why you probably train like, you know, a bodybuilder or someone who wants to look a bit better, perfectly fine. But the thing is just this, if you have very low fatigue resistance for maybe just genetically or your life circumstances, like you're super stressed and you don't sleep all that well, then it's a very good approach and it can get you a good part of the way. We have this thing where we basically say you can get 80% of the results with 20% of the effort. And the inverse is also true. That means to get the remaining 20% of the results, you have to apply 80% more effort. That also means you're going to have a very inverse relationship of what you're going to do, or the outcome you want in terms of what you're going to have to do to get that outcome. So this is why it really works, because you can do, relatively speaking, very little, but get an extremely high outcome for little effort, the 80-20 rule. But on the other side, and that's where I think for people who are not athletes or don't have aspirations of being athletes, these shouldn't care about getting the last 20%, because it's the last 20% where you have to apply an inverse relationship of effort versus the amount that you're going to get out. So this is, it's not, for most people, especially for a normal person, it's not going to be worth it. And this is exactly why it works. You get the most result for the least amount of effort. So, thank you for watching. Lars and Conditioning, signing out.